He will do great things. He will do great things. Bless His holy name. Oh, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His holy name. Oh, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His Hallelujah.
Day. What joy they have in their hearts because of the things that they are able to conceive, understand with that of their eyes. But my children, I say unto thee, all things that are attractive to the sight of eyes are not that pertains to eternal life. There are many material things, saith the Lord, that has been laid out on display to entice, to beguile, to lead thee off into a world of materialism. For I say unto thee, those that do those things, those that desire after those things, have lost the pathway of life, and they're treading a pathway of that of destruction. And I say unto thee, great will be the day when many will weep, and sadness will fill the homes of many in this fair land, because suddenly they begin to realize they have missed the way. And I say unto thee, my children, I have shown thee a way, and the way that is right. Come and walk therein, and thou shalt not walk in the darkness, as the world does grope in darkness tonight, saith the Lord.
In the eye of the beholder, and you can only believe what you see. If you're looking through eyes of compassion, you will see a reflection of what I used to be.
we've got so many things going on in our modern world. And if it's allowed to continue on for the next 50 years, we will reach an hour to mention the name of God in a public place would be like looking upon blasphemy to the way of modern man's thinking. I look behind some of this stuff they call education, if you will study the purpose behind it. The end result is to bring that mind to a point in time and way of thinking that the individual does not have time to devote his thinking in a way of communicating with his Creator. I said this morning, a lot of people don't read that Genesis 4, which is the genealogy of the Canaanite side of the beginning of men. But I can say this tonight. Had the side of Cain in the land of Nod, you read that 4th chapter, had they stayed there and never dared to look back toward Eden, where the Adam's genealogical line began to originate, you would not see an earth today filled with crime and violence, men studying how to get to the moon and Mars. You might say, well, what's wrong with that? There'll never be a head of cabbage harvested off of the moon. And I know Al Gore would put every cow on the backside of the moon if he had his way to clean up the environment down here. But then there ain't going to be no more milk. Feed the little babies that are born down here. Our modern man today is eventually heading on a road of no return. We don't need God. There is no God. There is no devil. But yet there's an unseen spirit driving him down the road just as fast as he can travel. And that's why I say, when you take out of accessibility to people in their natural mortal state the opportunity to learn about God, you destroy the means in their young life to get started on the right road. When Cain left the land of Eden, after killing his brother Abel, what motivated him to do it? Jealousy. Jealousy was not an attribute in Abel's line at all. Abel did not hate Cain, but Cain somehow or other, he hated Abel, because he's seen God accept his sacrifice and reject his. You could see what God said to Cain after watching him a while. When Cain began to realize he was being looked at, watched, every move, every thought, he got to the place, brothers and sisters, he had to make a decision to get out of this place. And that's why it says here, and he left Eden, the presence of God, and he went and dwelt over in the land of Nod, east of the Euphrates and the Tigris River. From there, brothers and sisters, that line geologically began to multiply. It is very evident there was nothing that was ever produced and born on that side of the border that really carried an understanding as to how to get acquainted with God. I think that's a sad picture. But when we come to that last son there, called Lamech, there's a reason, brothers and sisters, and who wrote this? This is not some handed-down mythological story. Moses wrote this as he was coming through the wilderness leading the children of Israel. He wrote the first 5 books that we have. That's called the Jewish Torah. The book of Genesis, the very word itself means the history of the genes. And we know this, that in the genetic laws of reproduction, whether you're talking about animal life or human life, these genes, you can divide them down into chromosomes. There's a filing cabinet. These chromosomes carry the characteristics of the parents before it. This is why, brothers and sisters, the devil knew exactly what he's after. And brothers and sisters, tonight, I wished I did have a mixed congregation for an illustration. Most of you don't even know what's going on. You don't even hear it on TV news. You don't know what's behind the governmental leaders of our nation who are trying to reshape our society for the 21st century. They are hard at work trying their best to design a future for a modern man that has no concept of God at all. And that's why I say 50 years from now, it'll be forbidden for you to practice any kind of belief in a religious manner. You say, I don't believe that. Stick around. The day will come, the devil will make you eat your unbelief in things that are practicable and sensible that's going on. You hear so much said about how are we going to get this pornography off of the internet. They have to come along and invent some kind of a gadget to cut down the circulation and the flow of this news and this information in this monstrosity of a thing that man has designed. It all goes to show, in all of our leadership of our day, there is not a human mind that even perceives that anything in the realm of pornography is wrong or evil. And thousands of young children sitting in classrooms, they know how quick to press a certain button, and here comes flashing in front of them while the teacher's got their back to the wall. Unsightly scenes only the devil ought to have to look at. And a nation that at one time was known to the world as a Christian nation is now then given the world an opportunity to look at the evils of it. How fast a nation can slip and slide. When we step over in Genesis 6, and in the 4th verse, there were giants in the earth in those days. When did this take place? After that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Let me say this. It does not matter whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, or what. For too long now, brothers and sisters, modern educated man has tried to read his Bible and ignore certain facts. These men that it speaks of here is not Adam's descendants at all. They are the pregenerating element from Cain's line over in the land of Nod. Because Cain is not a son of God. He is a product of God, but it's how the devil used this attribute or law to get his objective. And may I say that he's doing it today. let me explain to you a little bit. Why were these giants being born? Having grown up on a farm, reading, studying, and I didn't do it sitting in a schoolroom about the genetic laws of breeding of animals. I acquired a book my own. It is a known fact. Let me use horses, for instance. It's easier to explain it this way. You know and I know, in the original male and female horse that God created in the Garden of Eden and brought it to Adam, Adam named it what it was to be called. In the bodies of those two animal creatures is a genetic law of reproduction. The Bible doesn't tell you what particular breed that original horse was characteristic of. But we know this. After the record of history and time and man, as man became acquainted with, we will say, the different characteristics and how the breeding process could be done to change, to alter, to bring about an increase in size. It would change also the characteristics of the animal. When we come into the Dark Age period, which most all school children can read in their geography or history books, especially when it says knighthood was in flower, meaning when that was the day the knight stood out. They were not big men, don't never think that. But in their hour, they were the biggest they had. In World War II, it says this, that the average soldier of World War I was 1 inch taller than the average knighthood when knighthood was in flower. In World War II, the average GI soldier was 2 inches taller than the biggest knight there was when knighthood was in flower. What made the difference in the size of men? First off, we can say this. It's whatever his body has been exposed to in the way of environment and what he has been able to take in for his existence, keeping his body, we will say, resupplied with the nutrients. As man became, we will say, smart enough to build himself into a different environment, making it easier to live and exist. This also passes off through his genetic laws of reproduction, the ability for his offspring in the future to carry these advantages. Now reverse it. Put man in an environment. His survival is hanging by a thread. The horse breeders of the Dark Ages. I've got the book on it. Before that, there was no such thing as Clydesdale, Percheons, Belgians, Ayrshires, or any of them big, tall monsters. Men were selected to be the breeders. And as they were chosen, he will plainly tell you in this book who were the people that bred and developed this size of an animal. That let me know, brothers and sisters, if man knows how to cross the genes of certain species, he can be the designer of a creature that fits his choice. And the dirty devil was behind every bit of it. Now then, that lets me say this. When the devil began to impress these Canaanite women, as they begin to appear at the borderlines, to expose themselves for the sons of God to take a look at, I have to say, brothers and sisters, there was a breakdown in this Canaanite society. Because it plainly tells you that Lamech was a conqueror, and he was a wild man. He had a temper like a buzzsaw. He killed a man for hurting him. You know what that attribute is? It's of the devil. That did not even exist from Adam's line. And we've got a bunch of smart preachers today that deny that the devil was behind it. It's the very beginning of man's downfall. And I will say this, that's why we've titled this, Satan's Last Strike. Satan knew that by crossing these Canaanite women with these sons of God, God in his law of reproduction, which says, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. God wanted future generations to understand one thing. When you start messing with my laws and my genetic attributes, I will give you something that shows my displeasure in it. That's exactly what he did. Not only giants were born. What in the world does a giant need to be around this environment? But not only that, not all were born giants. Some were born intellectual wizards. Now, please, school teachers, don't take offense at what I'm going to say. But be realistic and listen to the outcome that the devil has been after for all these centuries of time. Every one of these men, that it says, men of renown, what did they reach acclaim in? Recognition. They had a mental outlook and an understanding about certain things that's beneficial only to an earthly-minded creature. Not a one of them could point man and show man how to live for his God. And the reason for this, the devil was after, if he could get this gene that has developed these attributes from the other side of the river Euphrates, over in the land of Nod, if the devil can be allowed to impress and bring these two elements together, he will eventually cross these negative genes into this line. And I say it was a pure line of Son of God. But it was a line at that time that did not have eternal life. Because death has done been imputed into them. Since death was imputed, that didn't stop the devil. He wanted them to have more than that. He wanted them to be just exactly like in the line of the sons of God. He wanted them to be just like what was going on in the line of the Canaanite element of people. I've got a reason for saying this tonight. And I'm coming right down the corners of our colleges. And some of you are not going to like what you hear. We've got smart, intellectual geniuses today in our colleges. They're behind our politicians as they design this nation for a new world era and the 21st century to literally immigrate, to cross up every race of people in America. Till eventually there will no longer be a white man nor an original black man. We will become a multicultural element of people. And you're going to wonder who designed it this way. The dirty devil. We could have a lot of professors with here, but I have to say, stick around, sir, and hold on to your seat. The day will come, they will gnaw it out from under you. Because you're putting together something that God's displeased in. My Bible tells me what was going on at the flood time. God cursed that element of people. He only saved 8. Yet it is through the loins that the 3 sons of Noah carried the characteristics and the genetics as they've now been mingled. If you will study the names of these sons, you will find they are the progenitors of every race on the face of this earth today. But now then, you've got a super-minded philosophy. Let's mix them. And when you do, you'll have a devil. I've got sense enough to know, brothers, I've read history. Every city, every nation that has ever tried to mix the races and create a compatible society, that original element of society perished. Go on and do it. Let's see what you get. Because when you start messing with the laws of God that's capable of bringing mankind, God wants them to still be after His design, not yours. When the dirty devil did after the flood, what does the Bible say? God, He separated them. Then He set the bounds of their habitations. They developed their own cultures. Every man on the face of this planet is guilty of the environment he himself has contributed to. But you try to change it. Sometimes they don't want to be changed. There's some people you can educate. There's some you can't. You only aggravate. I can say this tonight, and it don't make me a bit of difference how you take what I'm saying. But if you live long enough, you'll live to see the day people in America will scream and say, "My God, what are we going to do?" You have contributed to your own environment because you let some silly philosopher somewhere tell you there is no God. You only live in a material world of matter and substance. That's what you think. And that thing's going to be your curse. It's going to be your downfall. And you'll have to sleep with it. Now, let's see what come out of this mixture. First the giants, then these men of renown. Ain't it strange? Cain, his name's recorded, because look what he did. Here is a son of his, Lamech. Look what he did. He's the first one to introduce polygamy to that Canaanite line. But look what came out of those two wives. Musicians, manufacturers of things in brass and iron. And another line, the nomadic peoples. Brothers and sisters, it goes to show that the Bible record of history is right. In that whole part of the world, the nomadic way of life for some people was found all the way from India to Egypt. Does that say that everybody was a nomad? No, sir. But the nomadic way of life was how a man would take a wife and some servants. He would collect either herds of sheep or herds of cattle. He never owned a spot of ground in any one particular place. He would travel hundreds of miles to the arid, open countryside. They were nomads because they had that nature. And many of them still live in the Middle East of the world today. Having been in Israel in 1968, this was a year after the Six-Day War in 1967. The Israeli government, the nomadic people that was then in the land of Jordan and regions in thereabout, they was quite familiar with the Israeli people. But yet they loved the nomadic way of life. And many of the nomadic men joined the Israeli army because they had not liked the life under the Jordanian regime. After the war was over, It was said that the Israeli government, our guides told us this and showed us some of the houses. The officials of the Israeli government communicated with these nomadic men, promised them, we will give you a new home. You will not have to live alone in the deserts anymore. Well, we will see to it that you have jobs and things. They showed us some of the new houses that was put up. They took these nomadic families and put them in there. 3 years later, when we was back there, another guide showed us as we passed through. So see those houses? They was built for the nomads. And they left them. They went back to the desert. It goes to show people have created their culture, their appetite. And while you would like to change it, give them what you have. But 9 times out of 10, if they have the freedom of choice, they'll go back to their original habitat. I said that for a purpose. Because, brothers and sisters, it all boils down to the fact that when these Canaanite women, they were being born in the plurality, God was not obligated to keep the sexes on equal basis. He wanted people to eventually one day wake up and realize the devil took these men, these people, multiplied them, and the devil used them. And brothers and sisters, when them women begin to appear at the borders of Eden, and the sons of God begin to take it to them, this is the first time the sons of God line has even known what polygamy is all about. But it was from this type of a mixture. Oh, the dirty devil, he's got a plan. Now listen to me, preachers. I don't care how much education you got in theology. You're saying that this seed of the serpent is all of the devil. You're saying what took place here in Genesis 6, fallen angels are the sons of God. They were not. But you're saying that these sons of God, which is fallen angels, came down and pushed themselves into flesh, and it had relationship with Adam's daughters. Come here, preachers. What did Jesus say in Matthew 24 and Luke 17? As it was, so shall it be. Well, then you have your next example in Sodom and Gomorrah. That was not angels down there, brothers and sisters, having a relationship with some of the females in Sodom and Gomorrah. That was young men of the Sodom and Gomorrah society. And no sooner did the angels of God that came down and visited Abraham, they had an errand to carry out. When they came into Sodom and Gomorrah at evening time, all of that bunch of gay devils looked upon them. And when the sun was sinking, and these young men have been invited by Lot into his house, ain't it strange when the sun sinks, there's no more light. The evening shadows have been swallowed up in darkness. Every bug, whether he's under a rock or under a building, he's out crawling the pathways. It wasn't long till that dirty bunch of gays was on Lot's porch, beating the door down. And I want to say this tonight. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. You have gays knocking at the White House, at the Congressional Cabinet, demanding a law to be passed that no more will the gays be separated, nor the lesbians, from the total society of America. The day will be every hospital will have to throw their doors wide open to gays and perverts. Every governmental office building will have to open every office door to hire gays. And they're demanding that attention. Insomuch, if you run a place of business, you've always tried to keep clean, moral people, the devil will see that laws are passed. One day you will have to lay off pure, clean living, innocent human beings to give that dirty bunch of ornery stuff that the devil has manufactured a right to work in your workplace. When you make laws to do that, you automatically create an environment that's self-destructive. No society that's ever given themselves over to this type of a lifestyle has survived 100 years. I don't care whether you get mad or not. It's self-destructive. I don't care how you lean in your philosophy or thinking. The day when it will come, it will gnaw the foundation right out from under your life. No. Don't say, I said kill him. I'll treat him like a human being, and that's all. But I'll say this, mister. You have accepted a spirit into your life. And as far as I'm concerned, you have as much right to eat as I do. But you keep your dirty hands off of things that belong to me, and I will keep my hands off of things that belong to you. And we'll go on down this road of life, and you're responsible how you make your bread of life, because I won't give it to you. And I know this. There's no gay man by himself that's ever going to be a daddy. And I hope to God he never is. There's no lesbian woman that lives that lifestyle is ever going to be a mother. So woman, keep your hands to yourself. Make your living the best you know how. But when the day comes, you get lonely, and you're 70 years old, you're 75, then 80. Don't sit around and weep because you have no young person to come around and entertain you. You choose the way of life. You didn't want to be a mother, and that gay man, you didn't want to be a daddy, to know what it is to look in the face of your own son that you have begotten. No, you wanted to take some other child out of orphanage somewhere and say you're the daddy. You are a bastard. You shouldn't have said that, Brother Jackson. Now let me get back to what I meant a while ago. On the Trinity broadcast, as two men was discussing and explaining serpent seed in Genesis 6, they agreed that this was fallen angels came down and project themselves into flesh and carry on these relationships. This is on Trinity broadcast. This is supposed to be educated preachers of our modern time. They're the type that thousands listen to tonight. And they're saying that this generation of people that's born of that's what is serpent seed. Brothers and sisters, let's be sensible and reasonable. That's not serpent seed. That's devil seed. Because they plainly said it was angels who are devils that did this dirty thing. Angels, fallen angels, are not serpents. You got me? Because the original serpent was cursed. So, that's why I said, I've got the last word. these sons of God was absolutely sons of Adam that's falling to the temptation of the devil as they looked upon this sexy bunch of women approaching their environment. And that's why I say today, young girls, please, I'm not trying to be vulgar before you. I appreciate you. I'm the daddy of 4 daughters and the father of a son. But they know what I've taught. So listen to me. When I see some of this tommy rot, nonsense, silliness, you pass a drive-in restaurant, McDonald's, Burger Chef, Burger Queen, Wendy's, and you see a carload of girls running from place to place. It used to be young men chased the girls. But the Bible says in the last days this would be a sign that women would circumpass the man. Here in the fair land of America, from the colleges to the drive-in restaurants, the girls travel in groups. Some don't have a good motivation at all. College is only an opportunity for them to give themselves over to the lifestyle they're going to learn while they're sitting in that institution. Young people, don't say that I have said that every one goes to hell. I'm not telling you that. But the colleges of our day, 1998, in the month of October, are not the institutions that they were 75 years ago. Don't think it. The professors don't even talk like that. This is why I have to say, there's a lot more learned in our institutions today that's going to send a young element to hell than it does on the pathway to heaven. Why? Satan is making his last strike. I never heard when I was a boy growing up in grade school some of the vulgarity, pornography. Yes, everybody, a little boy, once in a while would have a little silly, dirty joke. Like one teacher of sex education in our modern institutions. His idea was, well, I don't want my children to learn all about the facts of life behind the barn. Now then, I'll say, you'd have been better off if you did. Because you sent your daughters to college to learn all about the facts of life, and they were the ones that became pregnant out of wedlock, that opened up the door for the devil to invade our institutions. And it has reached such proportions that they begin to demand abortion rights. I can remember the time when vaguely, hardly would you ever hear of a young girl having to get married before they were actually really married. You could rest assured, motherhood was still in its flower age. Decency, morality. It's understandable a girl can do something wrong once in a while, here and there. But when that becomes a pattern of life, somebody's going to bear the responsibility. Today, the statistics show abortions run into the hundreds of thousands every year. And see, they've been trying to fight this. Roe versus Wade in the U.S. Supreme Court. And when they're demanding abortion rights, where does it all stem from? Take it back to your philosophers of sex education. First off, they took out of the minds that it's wrong to indulge in relationship outside of wedlock. When they did that, they opened the door. Girl after girl followed the crowd. Boy after boy followed the crowd. And it isn't long, little babies are being born by this crowd of daddyless children. So they say, we'll abort them. Now, why did I say that? So when they get that issue solved, and it becomes in a law, they're wanting to absolutely fix it, and they've done it. Some young women now, we've got them in our modern society. They're not 18 any longer. They don't want to get married. They went to college. They've got all the degrees they need in mathematics and business. So they get a job. And it ain't long, they've worked themselves up. President of a bank. But there's another part of life that stems back into the social realm. And a lot of these women, they want to be able to have a relationship with a man, the opposite sex. They want to be able to have a relationship outside of wedlock. But if they, for some reason or other, get pregnant, they want to be able to go to a certain hospital and have an abortion paid by the government that had to pass that stinking law because they want to follow that lifestyle. Let's take it back to the beginning. It wasn't so in the original state. I don't mean to make any person feel bad, please. But follow my picture, and you'll see where you're at. You'll see what's been going on for the last 35 or 40 years. So finally they get their abortions all pretty well worked out. We've got those that's for the rights, and then the pro-life element. And neither one of them have got any sense enough, brothers and sisters. They're not going to change this world. They're just an element of people. They've got an idea. Because this thing ain't going to be changed until Jesus Christ comes. He's the answer to the heartache, to the sorrow, to the burden that mankind has brought upon himself. Now then, when I read to you this morning from this little magazine here about what these scientists have said about cloning, what does this all stem to, boil down to? We've got a bunch of philosophers. They're trying to discover, and I heard this on TV the other day, the medical scientific world has just about discovered the particular gene that they feel is responsible for carrying the carrier for cancer life. If they can find this and prove that this is it, then this opens the door for their exploration by being able to separate this gene. It will open the door also, brothers and sisters, that in the future years, not too long in the future, they've already said they can predetermine the sex of your child before it's even born. Oh, brother. When they start doing things like this, they're taking the place of God. I want you to know, brothers and sisters, there ain't nothing these medical science won't do. They'll have some been living for 1,000 years. That's what they're after. Let the rest go to hell. You say, well, what's wrong with living a long time? Up to a certain point, there's nothing wrong. But it's when scientists begin to take the thing and they may manipulate and fill in the gap and try to prove by their scientific achievement, listen, we're all a bunch of earthbound creatures. We're living in a materialistic world. Diseases have been on here ever since the beginning of man. I have to say there was no diseases in Eden. Man was not even promised that. God just told man, the day you eat of that fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt surely die. So my point is, brothers and sisters, yes, there's no doubt in my mind. The world is standing right at the brink and the threshold of science, both in the medical and in the other scientific studies that work for the government. They're eventually going to absolutely bring on what they call a clone man. How many of us ever saw the picture of the clone sheep in Ireland? Dolly. The question is she actually a sheep? She baas like one. But the point is this. When they do clone a man, what are they cloning him for? I know up to the point they are not cloning him to leave him in existence too long. They're cloning him for spare parts. I said they're cloning him for spare parts. Do you think that creature's got a mind of its own? It sure has. How do you think that fellow's going to feel when suddenly someday these crazy cross-eyed scientists come to him, bind him hand and foot? What you going to do? Just be calm. They cart him off to a hospital room. They inject him and put him to sleep. Well, we've got 10 men waiting for his heart. Only one can get it. But my point is, modern man has opened up his mind to the devil. And the devil's going to try his best to prove to this world, forget God. Now you admire me, because I'll give you all the knowledge and technology you need. Imagine, brothers and sisters, from the medical laboratories, from the scientific halls of our different places, they'll clone these creatures. Oh, yes, I can see some of them. They've got curly hair, blue eyes, 6 foot tall, well built. They were designed to be that way. Because it didn't take the cloning material from a scrub man, from a little 5'2" run. Thereafter, the average 6-footer, weigh 178 pounds, well muscled, intellectual, but don't talk about God. They're out to get rid of that. So they clone this creature. What a cute little fellow he is. Listen to what I'm going to say. He will never know what it is to stick his little nose against the breasts of a mother and draw his nourishment. Think about it. He's designed to lay in an incubator somewhere or a bed and take a bottle from the hand of some nurse that knows he's cloned. He's been brought into existence for spare parts. Oh, God, help this society. You say it sounds silly. Stick around, brothers and sisters. We've got a generation of fools, atheists, idiots, and they're going to go down on record. They're the bunch that help send this society of modern man thinking, who has no morals, who has no principles. Years ago, when they did away with prayer in the school, little did they realize every God-fearing parent ought to rose up right then and took their shotguns and walked into the schoolroom and told every man on the school board, you change this stinking thing or we will change it for you. And you tell that Supreme Court just what Harry Truman did. And Harry Truman didn't use good language. He's the only president ever told him to go to that place. I wish we had one had backbone enough to tell the U.S. Supreme Court to do it today. When that Supreme Court gets where it can rule the laws and make the laws, and then the government comes along like a bunch of puppets and perpetuates this stuff, they're no better. Now then, I've got material right in here. Every preacher across this nation that ever puts anything in print, and he speaks against the government for its wrong, for what it's doing, the IRS is being given the files. We have generated and put together a mechanism worse than Hitler's Gestapo's. And the day will come when America will weep. I didn't know it was coming to this. Brothers and sisters, God help this nation. Somewhere may there be an element of people wake up. And you can't say God did this. The devil did it. Because the devil, brothers and sisters, seen America. When the last governmental leadership would have the backbone to stand for the principles of that which is right and righteous. Our laws have been changed. Our Constitution has literally been whittled away, until the things that it does says don't mean that no more, because we got a bunch of idiotic interpreters of the Constitution that don't mean this. That's just like a bunch of these so-called theologians that say the Bible don't mean this, it means this. You see, we found out this. This translation is wrong. Well, the Constitution I studied about when I was in school, I had to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag when I was drafted into the Army. And every young man that went off to the war, whether he went east or west, he put his life on the line that he would die fighting for this nation, because he believed in the principles that our Constitution and the Articles of Independence stood for. We pledged that not a one of us was out to undermine the Constitution or our independence. So, brothers and sisters, our nation is falling not because of the soldiers we've had, but because of that bunch of fallen politicians we've got. And I have to say, there comes a time, brothers and sisters, you don't pray for leaders. Where do you get that at, Brother Jackson? Romans 1. What does it say? Paul writes about the societies that give themselves over to this lesbian, effeminate, abusers of themselves with mankind. And did Paul say pray for them? You tell me what he said. Such are worthy of death. Well, I can see right now where you lean, Brother Jackson. I'm not changing my stance either. I'm an American to the core. But my brain just refuses to accept this modern philosophy, because I can read through the whole stinking mess. So as I try to bring this portion of this message to a close tonight, I'm not mad. I might sound like it, but I'm not. But what I'm saying it firm enough to let people know. The other night, Brother Tim, he made a quotation here in the platform about something that he'd heard. The data on the urban crime rate. Here it is right here in the magazine. American political elites and the corporate media are anxiously touting or tooting statistics that show a nationwide decline in crime rates. But experts are beginning to fear that some of the data may be cooked. So far this year, police administrators and other managerial officials in law enforcement, bureaucracies, have been charged with reporting false crimes, statistics in Philadelphia, New York, Atlanta, Boca Raton, all cities with high crime rates whose numbers could easily miss up the national FBI crime data. The New York Times reports that in Boca Raton, Florida, a police captain, with the knowledge of the police chief, systematically downgraded serious crimes like burglaries to mere vandalism or trespassing. What an ornery society we're getting. The result was a serious underreporting of the city's felony rate by 11% in 1997. The city of Philadelphia was forced to withdraw from participation in the FBI crime statistic gathering program because of widespread downgrading of serious crimes and gross underreporting of crime rates by local officials. Because the city, which had a high murder rate, accounts for 2% of all homicides in the U.S. What if reports can have a significant impact on national crime figures? It's all gotten out of hand to such a state. If they don't begin to change how this looks, society begins to become alarmed. And that's why I have to say, go ahead, philosopher. Go ahead, politician. Mix them up. If you want to know what crime is, stick around. God will give you a crime rate that will blow your head off. Because men will become devils. They will hate you. Here's a police officer. I can't pronounce his name. A former police commissioner in Buffalo, New York, said there is increased pressure on police administrators from politicians to make city officials look good by reporting less crime. Promotions and pay raises are becoming increasingly dependent on good data, said the Times. A typical tactic by data falsifiers is to downgrade felonies like aggravated assault and burglary. They are frequently classified as misdemeanors, which are not reported to the FBI. Ain't this a great big joke? I can see why the devil, through modern man, would want to picture it that way. Because our society is headed on a downward road. Every day, you don't hear, brothers and sisters, criminals that are 80 years old stalking societies with high-powered rifles. You hear of youth running in gangs, learning about guns. New York City, Kenneth Donahue, the head of the police department's Transportation Bureau, department was reclassifying subway crime, underestimating the actual amount of crime on the underground rails by about 20%. Analysts say that politicians' claims about the role of community policing in reducing crime have become potent weapons in political campaigns. Many national corporate news outlets and magazines have touted community policing to explain a downward dip in crime statistics since 1994. I'll have to say this. It'd be better if we had some of the old West days. At least you could pack a gun and defend yourself. Brother Jackson, that sounds foolish for you to say things like that. I'll tell you exactly where this bunch wants to lead you to. They want to take your weapons away from you. If the day ever comes, the American citizen has nothing to defend himself in his house with his doors locked. Out there knocking at your doors or driving our highways, shooting at random, the crooks will have his weapons. And the government don't guarantee you that they won't be out there. He'll take the innocent, the law-abiding, that pays the taxes, that keeps this government, that keeps these politicians alive, feeds them, and they have health insurance. All they have to do, they get sick, they go to the Naval Hospital. They raise their salary every year, but they'll see to it that yours is cut. And they'll let the medical corporation, brothers and sisters, swap you from one insurance claim to another until you're bled for every penny you're worth, and then use it as a political ploy to try to get reelected. Anytime a government, brothers and sisters, does things like this, you are a statistic on the gambling table of their political diplomacy. They don't make life better for the citizen. They make life better for themselves. And they want to have it said, they are the masterminds of a new race of people that will flourish into the 21st century. It's the beginning of the end. I'll say this and I'll quit for tonight. I was raised up in the hills right out here. In the corner of my dad's living room was always a 12-gauge shotgun. When I was born into that household, when I was big enough to look at that thing, Dad would point the finger, "Come here, sonny." And he would take me. And he would say, "You don't touch that." That's the way the dads used to talk. Anytime he would take this gun to go squirrel hunting, I would like to go with him. Sometimes he would let me go and sometimes he wouldn't. But as I grew up in that household, my dad never abused me. He never beat me. He never screamed and yelled and cursed me. "Keep your hands off of it." He explained to me what the thing was, what it could be used for. I learned that was a dangerous thing. Stay away from it. Dad didn't have to hide it in a closet. We grew up in the household. Certain things, don't touch it. And I have to say, it would be the same way today if a lot of our young children was born and raised in households that dad and mother had some principles about what they're telling that young'un to do. Last night, they showed an advertisement. 2 little boys coming in a home. For some reason, this one little boy, he looked like he might be about 4.5 or 5 years of age. He opens the closet door. He reaches over and he pulls a chair, sets it in the closet door. You wonder what's he up to. He goes and gets about 3 big books and puts on top of that. Then the next thing you know, he's on top of them books. And it shows him reaching his hand over a shelf in the top of the closet. And directly he pulls out a revolver. The end result was, in playing, one of these little boys was the casualty. And that's why philosophers of modern age, you don't need guns in your home. As long as there are gangsters out there, hear me, as long as there's gangsters out there that are guilty of breaking my window out, breaking my door down when it's locked, as long as I have access to that old shotgun. I promise you, they'll carry him out of there. Because I built that house. My wife laid the tile on the kitchen floor. And you dirty rat, I don't care what Clinton says and the whole law bunch. I'll beg him. I'll plead with him. Get out and leave me alone. But don't slip in here and wake me up. Because I'm an American. And I'm not about to give my life to some silly devil and a bunch of modern philosophers. Like I saw a woman crying. She saw how her son had come to his end by some child playing with a gun that shouldn't have had it in the first place. First off, brothers and sisters, there's some things children can play with. There's some things they shouldn't even have. Their dad should have sense enough to know to tell that child. But you can see what's going on. We've got a society that's out of control. Don't blame the baby if he winds up wrong. It all started at the top. You dirty president, Supreme Court, every congressman and senator, you're all guilty because you've sold your office to the highest bidder. Listen to me. I know what they're doing because I get their stinking political mail begging me, if I want to see a certain law passed, something that I believe in, send in your contribution. Help me fight this thing and get this bill passed. I wasn't born in a nation, brothers and sisters, that my dad had to go to Washington and lobby our congressmen for certain rights. Our founding fathers laid that down in the Constitution. But I find there's been a sellout since World War II. Our Congress and Senate has been absolutely lobbied by foreign lobbyists. And they've sold their office, overriding the American constituent who's paid the taxes, paid their salaries, kept the government going. And now it's beginning to backfire. Come on, American, shell out. Help me get this passed. And I have to say, go dig potatoes. It'll do you more good. And they've opened the door to the devil, and now he stalks our streets, our institutions. There ain't a virtuous girl in America today that can step on a college campus. But before long, they'll find out whether she's a virgin or not. If she is, they'll belittle her, drag her name in the mud, and they'll razz her till she breaks down. I read this in a religious tract a few years back. This girl was raised by Christian parents. They sent her to this college to take an education. She no sooner is there, just like they always do, certain girls want to gang up with certain ones. It wasn't long. She was approached. If she'd ever had an affair with a young man. No. Well, the same girls that she thought was going to be her friends, they began to razz her, belittle her. Their purpose was to break her down. And this went on for the period of days. And the end of the tract said this. When the girl got enough of this harassment, she knew already what their lives was. She closed it out. And she said this. Look, I can change my life anytime I want to. But you can't. Take it or leave it. Have I said something wrong? I'd preach this in Washington if I had to. You lying bunch of politicians. Hell will get every one of you. But in hell will be people you've sold to the devil. And a lot of them are going to be young people. You thought there was no God. Brothers and sisters, my Bible tells me this. The day will come when every head will bow, every knee will bend, and every tongue will confess that He's God and that Jesus Christ is our Savior. I can't help but be this way. I can't help but think like this. Heavenly Father, I pray that I have not displayed myself as some angry creature, Lord, unrealistic. But Lord, I know there is an element of society tonight in this nation that's on an onward, downward course. And as it says in your word, the earth is covered with darkness, and the people with gross darkness. We know this, Lord. That's not from the lack of knowledge of what the universe has and how it functions. Man has clung to the limits on the tree of knowledge. And Lord, we see he's lowering himself into a pit that has no hope beyond it. Lord, just forgive me for saying things that maybe could have been said otherwise. But help the people who heard it. Help them to understand. One day we will all stand before you, the Creator, the life giver, the one that provided us a Savior and a means of salvation, how to escape this evil, and to trust you, Lord, to put us in a realm of safety. And our security is only in your hand. Lord, be with these young girls. Help them, Lord, to live and grow, to be pure and clean. And Lord, deep in their heart, they long for the day, for companionship. That's understandable, Lord. Lord, bring that young man that you've instilled some principles, some integrity, some ideals, that one day he wants to be a daddy. He wants to be able to look at his little offspring and hold his little wife in his arms, and the two hold that little baby. What a joy it is, Lord. You let me experience that, Father. And that's why, Lord, I have to say, help us, Lord, to cry out against this silliness, this filthiness, this instability, insecurity that's doomed to lead mankind to destruction. I love my brothers and sisters, and God bless these young people. Help them to hold true, Lord. For Lord, I ask it in Jesus Christ's name.